Hi there. This is the final episode of our season covering the wind through the keyhole. As is usually the custom, I want to tell you what's coming up next. We're going to be continuing the story of young Roland by picking up where we left off with the Dark Tower comics. So if you're looking on Comixology or Amazon, the three things that we are talking about are The Sorcerer, The Fall of Gilead, and the Battle of Jericho Hill. Additionally, after that, we're going to be covering The Little Sisters of Illyria, the Dark Tower novella that is in the short story collection, Everything's Eventual. After that, we're talking about the book Salem's Lot, and then The Regulators. And then we are on to The Wolves of the Kala. So that is just kind of upcoming programming for those of you who are curious about that. You can find all of those, wherever you want to get them. If you want to help out the show by getting them, you can go to Duckfeed.tv/tipjar. Use those Amazon links there. Buy any of those in whatever format you want, electronic, physical, or audio, and we get a small cut of whatever you buy. Again, that is Duckfeed.tv/tipjar. Now let's talk about the end of this very fun book. Welcome to Radio Free Midworld, a podcast about the Dark Tower series of books by Stephen King. My name is Cole Ross, and today I am joined by Chase Greenley.
Hello.
And also by Evan Thorne. Hey, Evan.
Hello. I'm back.
Yeah, and we are all here to discuss the very end of The Wind Through the Keyhole.
Excited.
The chapter structure of this book has made it very difficult to title these. This is The Skin Man Part 2 and also Storm's Over. Yeah. So
yep. This is The Skin Man's Over.
Yes. The Skin Man's End. Ew.
the Skin Man's overalls.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you know what? They're probably pretty funky working in them salt mines and stuff. Although that salt probably acts as a desiccant and actually probably keeps that mountain fresh.
Wow, you've thought about this way more than I have, Cole.
No, I literally just took that walk as we were getting there.
Yeah, sure. I believe that.
I guess what I'm saying is everybody should buy stock in my all-natural detergent that is mostly salt and dust. So
good for deodorant and making animals like you more.
Yeah, you just roll around in it like you're a chinchilla.
Cole's all-purpose alkali body scrub.
Yep. Ouch. That's the tagline. Ouch. So Chase, it's been a while since we had you on. It's definitely the first time for this for this season. So I want to kind of get your temperature on the book as a whole up to now. What made you hop on here? And how are you digging it?
It took me a while to get through this just because at my previous job, during the bulk of the reading of this, I was going through a busy season there. So I knew it was going to take me a little while to get through, even though this is a much shorter book compared to Wizard and Glass.
Yes.
Which was a blessing on that front. But I didn't really, this is my first time going through the series. So like all the other ones, I didn't really know what I was getting into. And man, did I not know what I was getting into with this one. The structure of this book is probably the weirdest one we've had so far since the book one.
Yes.
And it has been watching it unfold and then refold back in on itself was a really fun journey to go with it.
Yeah, just good going from one level of narrative to the next, down and down, and then back up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So since this is, since you are following through with the series for the show, towards the beginning of this season, we kind of speculated about kind of the notional person who is brand new to this, coming right from Wizard and Glass, which is very flashback heavy, to another book that is similarly flashback heavy. Mm-hmm. Were you fatigued with the tale of young Roland by the end of this?
I was honestly more fatigued by the tale of young Tim because the concept of the creature that is the Skin Man was really weird and creepy, and man, does it pay off real good in this episode. This is a very good monster payoff, and I'm about it.
Yeah,
but it's really, really good. I was extremely excited about it. I am kind of with you. Like I felt like the entire Tim section of the book, I could have done with a little bit less of that and a little bit more of the Skin Man.
Yeah.
I mean, 20% out of the Tim story, and it would have been perfect.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, 20% out of Tim and 20% more Wild West werewolf story.
Yeah, well,
or even
when you
or
put it
even
that
just
way,
keep it. Mm-hmm.
When you put it that way, 100% less Tim and 100% more Wild West werewolf story.
But I like both so much.
Yeah, I like both too, but I would have been very fine if it was just Wild West werewolf story.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Well, that I feel like that would have been fatiguing coming hot on the edge. Like the different layers and the different stories that were going on definitely kept things a little bit fresher.
Yeah.
If it had been the other way around, I feel like it would have gotten. If it was just flashback to young Roland again, that would have been like, all right, come on, let's get to the next thing.
Especially without the benefit of Elaine or Cuthbert, right? Like Jamie, you got Roland on top of Jamie, just too taciturn. Too taciturn MFers, not great.
Two grumpy teens.
Grumpy young men.
I feel like Jamie's almost a not a non-entity, but like he's kind of a set piece character.
Yeah.
Like it's Roland needs someone with him.
Okay. Well, here's an extra set of hands. One of them's red. That's why they're discounted.
That's why it's interesting. Ready, set, go.
Speaking of ready, set, go, let's jump into this because I want to get to that monster real bad.
Yes.
We were talking off mic, but it's like if you were reading this and you were thinking, it's fine, but where's the gore, King? I came here for gore. I know you like gore. We're gonna get it. It's very good and very, very, very lovingly described.
Yeah.
Especially in the audiobook when you can hear the relish that Stephen King puts into it. He's just kind of like, all right, yeah, we're like, everybody is on board and all about this.
The tail end of the Wind Through the Keyhole, the story part of the book, The Wind Through the Keyhole, it's really pretty short. Like we pretty much covered the important story beats last time. Like Tim's mom was very proud of him and tried to keep him from seeing the body of his stepdad because it was a dead body and she's his mom, and that's probably a good thing to do.
You're gonna protect your kid. Yeah.
I have a child who is too small to hold a gun, so I don't know how I would respond in that particular situation, but it seems fairly reasonable.
Yeah.
And then, some gunslingers came through. He was the only person in Tree who would go with them. He carried bigger guns and did his shit real well.
Yeah. He went on to be called Lefty Ross, which is a very funny name because he's left-handed, right? That was his dominant shooting.
I imagine that's funnier for you than for either of us.
I mean, maybe if you called me Lefty Ross, that'd be very funny because I'm right-handed. Not very funny. Let's just say kind of a strange decision for a nickname.
Is your brother left-handed though?
No.
Oh well, never mind.
Yeah. So there, as far as I know, there is no Lefty Ross in my family.
That's a shame.
Yeah. Really? Or are we missing out?
Yeah, no, you should probably start forcing yourself to use your left hand as your dominant hand going forward.
Yeah, that's true. We can't really field a decent baseball team with all righties.
Yeah, no, like do it for the cast and do it for the Duckfeed Expos.
Okay. Yeah. No, that way I can fend people off.
Yeah, I don't see any problems with this whatsoever.
No,
none.
For sure.
Absolutely none.
Foolproof plan.
Yeah, I'll start you like doing like what surgeons do, and just on my left hand like roll a quarter around on my knuckles and stuff, and eventually I'll be able to hypnotize people.
Yeah, and really, if you want to commit, if you want to take it seriously, you should probably just like pulverize your right hand so that you definitely can't use it.
Just go
no
and get
return.
Right. Go and get some unnecessary wrist surgery on my right arm.
Yeah, no, go big or go home.
Yeah.
Actually, what if you just got a whole bunch of tattoos all over your right hand?
Okay.
So then,
just so I could get dates.
Well, so you could get dates, obviously,
Right.
but also dual purpose, so that your hand would hurt like a motherfucker, and you'd have to start using your left.
Okay.
Mm.
Wouldn't that wear off though? Don't tattoos eventually stop hurting?
Eventually, but at the end of it,
it'd be a period of time.
At the end of it, you'd have some bitchin' full hand tattoos.
Oh, the full-on Yakuza tats.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could get literally anything tattooed all over your right hand, including a whole bunch of tiny pictures of nothing but Stephen King's face, which I think everyone wants to see.
Oh, of course.
Stephen King's face, that is.
Yeah.
And then
Just,
you could just look at a whole bunch of them over and over again all the time.
Well, when you move them, it's kind of like the mermaid tattoo in Pete and Pete. Looks like he's dancing.
Yeah,
looks like he's dancing.
Yeah.
It's like Petunia, exactly.
like Petunia. Yeah. What were we gonna say, Chase?
I was going a different direction. I was thinking it was just a completed infinite pattern of just Stephen King's face, ever so slightly overlapped with each other, so you get kind of a hypnotic pattern going on.
Yeah.
Yes, like a Stephen King fractal.
Yeah.
Like a magic eye.
And I walk around with just one elbow length glove on that arm, and then like I only unglove. I only take that off when I want to baffle somebody, when I want to steal their jewels.
Yes, yes. Chase, I think we are onto something. I think that we have found the next Patreon stretch goal.
just okay, let me just go ahead and put this in there. Lefty Ross. Okay, there we go. People will understand. But yeah, that's the way that Tim's story kind of wraps up. You know, he does go on to become an honest to God gunslinger, kind of with the notion that you don't have to be like one of the line of Eld for that to happen. You know, like it's not unheard of, and kind of the way that they justify that is like Arthur Eld was out getting strange on the rag. You know, and
it's that was something that was interesting to me, because they Roland specifically mentioned that he was one of the few gunslingers who was not from the proven line of Eld, but you know, who knows, maybe he was anyway. But like, what does that say for Eddie and Susanna and Jake then? Like, does that say that they on some degree are descended from Arthur Eld, or does it cheapen their journey or who they are, or is it a non-issue? Like it was just kind of a strange beat for me.
Yeah, I think it's like a new covenant kind of thing, honestly, because when Gilead fell, they you know, that tradition went out the window, maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
World move on. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, gotta get gunslingers wherever you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But also, like, I was descended from Arthur Eld might also be like, you have DNA from Genghis Khan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just, it happens, you know, or Charlemagne or whatever, right? Yeah. But the reason we even had this story, you know, we heard about Tim and got to this point where he was Lefty Ross, was that Roland was telling this, you know, was telling the Wind Through the Keyhole, the fable, to this little boy, Bill Streeter. Kind of keep him comfortable, because Bill had just witnessed the death of his father to the hands of the Skin Man, the shapeshifter. And so this is all leading up to, you know, the aftermath of that and the discovery of the Skin Man himself. Roland's plan for Bill is to take him to Serenity, to take him to that brothel. Not brothel. What am I thinking of? That convent. They call it a brothel.
Yeah, it's very much not a brothel.
Yeah, it's kind of
as they kind of emphasize throughout the book.
They do, yeah. Maybe, you know what it is? I think it's because it's called Serenity. I was literally thinking of Firefly.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Also, we are about to go to a brothel here, like in a less than a chapter.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, in a couple of pages. So
yes, they have.
It's a reasonable mistake to make.
That is a good point.
They've got a lot of prostitutes running in circles, but no, they're going to take Bill and, you know, see if the convent will take him in, you know, so he doesn't basically get turned out onto the land like poor little Tim was so afraid of doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, It's now the next day, and the lawmen have rounded up the salties. And I just love the fact that they're called salties. That is such a it is a natural nickname, and that nicknames are sometimes just whatever the first thing you can think would, whatever the first you could think of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, they show up with 21 suspects from the salt mines, and they got all of them that could ride, whether they admitted it or not. Remember, the circumstances of Bill's dad's death was the skin man rode up on a horse and then rode away on a horse, right?
Yeah.
And what we get here is this kind of like 21 person, well, 21 plus, the 21 and over parlor scene here in this in this bar called the Busted Luck, which
I love Roland's crowd control measures in this scene. It is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And when I was reading it, I was this is one of those Stephen King scenes that is not in any way violent or disturbing, but still gets like a very visceral reaction.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you know, they've got all these people who know that they're suspected of being this horrible monster. And Roland kind of intuits that a lot of them are there voluntarily to try and put an end to this awful stuff that's going on.
Right.
And he also can tell that none of them fucking like him. They all think he's a dick just based on who he is and where he's from.
Right. And also like how young he is. Like you've got this young upstart who's got a bullet for one of the 21 of them. Yeah.
Like he's a kid from the big city who has this insane authority over everything.
Right.
And so rather than throwing his weight around, he says, I'm going to buy everybody a drink.
Yeah. I know it motivates you.
Yeah. And he does. He buys everybody 2 drinks at the bar, and that serves to kind of make them more inclined to cooperate, and also to kind of like loosen them up a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's a very Roland moment where he's like understanding. He's kind of like understanding other people, but also using that understanding to his own ends.
Yeah, well, the sheriffs, they're like, this is not a good idea. Like, have you ever seen what happens when you get alcohol in one of these miners? They're not exactly like well mannered. Roland understands that, but he knows exactly how much cooperation he needs from them, which is a lot for a very short amount of time.
Yeah, and it's just like this a very shrewd, very calculating, but like an early draft of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really cool, and that's one of those things where I love Stephen King's just kind of the way that he does long-term character development.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really fun to kind of see him like go back over this very extensively developed character and just kind of give him this scene where it's like, oh, here's an early version of what he would become like extraordinarily proficient at later.
Yeah. Well, especially like later on, and for the majority of the series, we don't really get to see Roland interacting with a lot of people like this. He just never has that many opportunities to like manipulate people en masse with his gunslingerness.
Yeah. Like, you know, Tull, but meh.
I mean, yeah. He was using the other side of being a gunslinger on that, the non-diplomatic side, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he started off very diplomatic.
Oh yeah. I mean, with what they did over in Magus, right, in Ambry, like all of that was cloak and dagger. Well, up until the very end. But even then, you could say like, oh, he just convinced that huge group of people to run into the waiting maw of the Eldritch monstrosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's persuasion of a kind.
What are you gonna do?
Well, you're gonna get a bunch of salties liquored up. Meanwhile, one of the deputies, Vika, he succeeded in kind of leaking the information that Billy saw the monster and that Billy's going to be kind of brought out again, right? So he is getting all of these pieces in place and kind of setting up a very precarious powder keg. And he really shouldn't be surprised at the way it turns out, honestly.
Yeah, that was the only part that seemed off to me.
Yeah. What were we going to say, Chase?
Oh, just agreeing with you. Like there is one way that this is going to go, and it's going to be whoever this guy is panicking at the last second, which is, spoiler, exactly what happens.
Yeah. And like, you know, no matter how much they try and get the circumstances lined up in their favor, the Skin Man, with this terrible power that it has, is always going to kind of have the first mover advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one of these posse, like, again, brings this little piece of world building. The reason we know that all these people can ride, even if they say, I don't know nothing about no horses, as he kind of talks about these games that are run, because of course it's a mining town, so they have a company store, they've got script, 16 tons, et cetera, et cetera. And what they do is they have these races every year, where you can get a year's worth of debt forgiven at the company store. And so anybody who, you know, they basically grabbed everybody with this executioner's band on their tattooed on their ankle, who has ever ridden before. And Roland, again, being probably, like appropriately diplomatic, but exercising restraint that I couldn't. One of the guys says, "Oh, isn't that a devilishly good plan? They never lose money on it, blah, blah, blah." And Roland's like, it's slavery, right? Okay, whatever. I'm going to let this be. Not the time, not the place.
Which is a very Roland pragmatic sort of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now it's time for the interrogation. Now we've got our we've got our parlor scene. So they've got all these people, sitting up on the bar. They take off their boots. They don't really instantly cooperate, and some of them mutter something about the green light. And this is a very cool detail that is fleshed out and is kind of the main clue that leads to, the reader being able to understand who is going to turn before they actually do, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think of this line? I can smell the reek of their feet to this day. And also, just it caused all like this. They've had this kind of assembly, this audience of prostitutes, and they all leave immediately when the boots come off. I don't know why I asked you guys to respond to that, because it's just such a gag, but I don't know.
Everybody's got a line.
Yep. Well, but yes. So the ankle reveal shows that 10 of them have the tattoos. They have the mark of the stockade around their ankle. And so they dismiss, they dismiss the others and say, hey, you can get your second shot or whatever. One of the ones who's dismissed pulls Roland aside and kind of gives a little bit more of a detail. And reading this or listening to this more appropriately, I remembered why I put desperation right before this one, because desperation is a tale of a mine that dug too deep and found something terrible and caused, devastation for the town around it. This is very similar. What do you guys think of the green light with the bitter voice? Chase?
It is. I love how technology in these books always runs the line between the most powerful and cool magic and straight up Lovecraftian mythos. And this absolutely just straddles that line so perfectly. It's like, I am here for green lights in caves. Because once that I read that line, it's like, oh, good. All right. Let's see what awful thing is going to happen, because I'll just say we dug too deep and too greedily.
Yeah. Yep. How about you, Evan?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, it's, let's a MacGuffin, like it's meaningless. It doesn't really call back to anything. It doesn't really foreshadow anything. It's just this like vaguely sinister, vaguely magical, vaguely technological, vaguely anachronistic, angry green light.
Oh, it foreshadows something, just not very far ahead.
Well, yeah. Well, but it's not like, it's not a callback and it's not a call forward. It's not something that like, it's not a reference to something that we see somewhere else where it's like, oh, it's totally that thing. Like, no, it's just like a fucking weird green light, and I love it. And it's so just like, yeah, you know, like, we definitely were digging real deep in the ground and we found some shit we shouldn't have, and then we fucked with it, and fuck.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
more North Central Positronics and their crazy AIs doing just basically being the equivalent of the demons, right?
Those rascals.
In book one, we had the speaking demon beneath the way station, right? And that is quickly replaced or supplanted by this, a different kind of demon, right?
Was the speaking demon like a technological sort of thing?
No, not as far as I can tell.
Okay,
because it produces it produces a jawbone out of nothing.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
I guess it could have 3D printed it, but
that seems very forward thinking, though, considering when that book was written.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is it's two things from different places that ended up serving a very similar purpose.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I really like this because it's like, I was half afraid that it was going to be a very obvious like some kind of like fan servicey bullshit.
Yeah.
And I love that it's just like a weird green light with like angry feelings coming out of it that most people were like, yeah, we shouldn't go there. And then one dude was like, I'm gonna go there. And then it was like, like, I loved it. I love it. It's perfect. It's very, very Stephen King. It's definitely got like some decidedly Lovecraftian echoes, which I'm always a fan of.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm absolutely here for the last act of this book.
I even love the way they put that. I forget the exact quote because I didn't write it down, but they say, they tried to seal it in, right? But rocks that are placed can be removed. That like, oh, once we have found something, it can't be unfound. Just because a lot of us are wise enough to resist the call doesn't mean all of us are. And so the Salties kind of have this reckon, right? They have this reckon that this voice that called out to them and just kind of said bitter things, but also made them feel bitter was bad news. And the clue for this ends up being on the wrist of one particularly kind of angry, one particularly salty named Ollie Ang. Who has glasses and a wristwatch, which nobody else has, and he kind of is obviously very, very proud of it.
Yeah, and I don't know why. I have no basis for this, but when I picture his wristwatch, it was like a Casio smartwatch.
Oh, like a calculator watch, like Walter White has. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't know why. There was nothing in the book to indicate that that's what it was, but that was just where my brain went with it.
That I like that because weirdly that wouldn't tarnish, it'd just be rubber or whatever. Yeah. So at this point they bring Billy out, have him walk up and down the lineup. And Jamie also shows up with a package way back. Roland had gone to the blacksmith and had something made. That something is the one thing that can actually deal with the Skin Man, the sacred metal. A silver bullet.
Hopefully, anyway.
Right.
Roland's kind of banking an awful lot on what Van said, and he doesn't really have any way to verify if it's true or not.
I am just immediately flipping through the Rolodex of the series in my head, trying to think of any time when Van Ay's advice turned out to be wrong.
Oh, I don't think it has, and I'm sure I'm sure that there are people out there who can make these connections or have read more Stephen King books more recently than I have that can come up with an example where that is true. That also ties in with the Dark Tower universe, but like when you're reading this book, it's like, oh. They make a very big point of saying that Van Ay said that this is what can work. So here's hoping he's right.
Yeah. Well,
and it introduces this really like it's gonna work. It's gonna work, but it also introduces this element of uncertainty that's just like, it's not that tense, but it's very fun.
Well, it's also so short. There's not an awful lot of like room for them to ramp up any kind of tension.
Right,
it,
exactly. Like you get to the end of the book and it's almost over, so you know it's going to work. But like,
yeah.
But it still throws this like this quiver of doubt into your mind that like
the part of this that stuck out for me, and I know this is literally just me being a pedantic piece of shit, but like much earlier in Stephen King's career, he made a very good point about silver bullets in It. When the kids thought, okay, well, we're going to try and shoot this, we're going to try and take out this werewolf. Let's melt our silver dollar and have a silver bullet made. And the kind of the smith, the die casting guy they go to says, oh, that'll never work because a silver bullet will spin in the air. Like it would never actually fire, and hit what it is. But here we are in Roland's world. All of a sudden a magical silver bullet exists. I know that is 100% beside the point, but I don't know. That's a very,
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's a very dumb point to raise, but it did stick out to me.
I mean, did how many shots does he have? Is it only the one bullet?
Yeah, it's only the one.
Yeah, it's only the one. I mean, that's a lot to bank on one bullet. And if any character in fiction is going to make that shot, it's Roland. But man, we are putting a lot of hopes and prayers, because I can overlook that thing because like maybe silver, like maybe it's composed differently in Midworld than it is on Earth. Like yes. I can swallow that little bit of a pill to get past that.
Yeah.
But
it's not actually a huge issue for me. I just wanted to show off that I read it recently, I guess.
It's a big book. You know what? Milk that as much as you can.
Yeah. Continue. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
That's about the end of my point. It's like, I'm just pointing out, so he got one bullet. He's got one shot, one opportunity to make this happen.
Yeah. Eminem style.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was just going to make that joke. Well done.
I believe I would need to go actually and pull the text citation. What I think he's doing is he is banking on just the fact that they are in such close quarters that it is less about accuracy and more about getting the shot off before the monster can hurt anybody.
Fair.
Yeah. Is what I think. I may just be filling that detail in on my own. So
yeah, I don't there is no point in this series where I've ever felt like Roland has doubted his own accuracy.
Right. If he does, he just doesn't take the shot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I had kind of the same thought where it's like, oh, it's only one shot, but like, what if he misses? But we're talking about Roland. He's not going to.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Skin Man attack, because we have Billy walking up and down the line, and he has this recollection, and it's not just a straight up recollection for him. Roland remembers this too, and Roland kind of kicks himself for not putting two and two together, because back when Roland had him hypnotized or was listening to him, talk about watching the Skin Man right away, he mentioned something about a white mark. And then he just kind of blew that off because there was other stuff to worry about at the time, I suppose. But Billy kind of like notices, he realizes, oh, all of the rings aren't the same. One of the men and the man who was at the stable has a broken ring on his ankle, a white scar up the side of it that kind of marks him and differentiates him. And while talking about this, and this kind of narrows it right down to Ollie Eng, we have Roland, who in the telling of the story says, as for what happened next, I thought over it many times since, and I don't think I could have prevented it. They had no idea how fast the transformation happened. Right. So last episode, we talked about anamorphing as a verb. This isn't the pained and labored, 5 minutes of turning into a tiger or whatever. No, this happens pretty much instantly. It's like a man what is made of water is kind of the impression that I get as he like elongates and turns into a Pookie. At least partially, because it is not a complete transformation. He is stretching out and basically turning into turning whatever part of his body is near whatever he wants to kill into the most advantageous thing for it.
Yeah, and just kind of based on the based on the description of Merlin turning from a tiger back into Merlin that we got in the last episode, the way that I read this scene was that, like, this transformation probably wasn't supposed to happen this fast.
Oh, that it was like it'd be because he was immediately in danger. He pulled a hammy doing this.
Basically, yeah. Like that was kind of the way that I read it, where it was like this was like not a usual sort of thing. So like that kind of just reinforced Roland's point that, like, we couldn't have predicted this. Like, even if they knew about shapeshifters and how all that worked, like, you know, you've got somebody who is desperate, backed into a corner. They're going to do what they've got to do. And I kind of got the impression that this was like unpleasant, even within the context of what we are talking about.
Let me
for Mr. Aang.
Let me describe the beats that Aang goes through.
Please
so we can respond to it. So his entire head twisted, his eyes turned from blue to jet black. He basically turned into a man-high snake over the course of 3 seconds. A Pookie, like Tim, saw over the over his dad's dead body back in the fairy tale, right?
Which not. Come on, Steve. Really?
It's symmetry. It's gonna pop up, and also a snake.
No, not the. It's the name.
Oh yeah,
it's the name. Really, that's all these crazy letters in the English language and all the ways you can shove them together, and you came up with Pookie.
He was in a real big Garfield phase at that point.
High five on the deep Garfield pull.
Oh my God.
So what we got ourselves here is a snake man who lunges his head straight into the mouth of the nearest the nearest deputy, but it doesn't stop there, because I think Weg has drawn on him. Weg is another deputy. He burrows through the neck of the person whose mouth that he shoved his head into.
That wasn't a deputy. That was the the foreman or something.
Oh, like shit! Yeah, okay. Thank you for filling that in.
Yeah, because the foreman, once they realized who it was, this older man who was kind of like I don't know if he was the formal or informal leader of the salt miners,
the old timer guy.
Yeah, like he ran forward and was like, I should have known it was you, and like was just furious. And then he got snaked.
he got snake in your neck. So what's that?
Oh, bad case of man snake.
Happens every time. That's a shame.
Damn this thing.
But yeah, bores through the back of the old timer's throat like a drill. Okay, so I imagine there's a little bit of spinning. So
like your standard snake.
Yeah, a little bit of crocodile action, but his head's twisting too. Again, body like water, mind like water, body like water. So it goes through the back of the neck, and then it turns to Weg, who is drawn with his venom, bites Weg. First the venom drips onto his arm and burns it, bites him, and then immediately Weg swells up and dies in an incredibly agonizing way. So 2 people are down by the time Roland is able to make his shot with a silver bullet. Hits the Pookie in the head, hits Aang in the head. What sprays out is human brains, because I guess whatever the silver bullet touches turns back to its original form.
See, I didn't read it that way. I read it that like he shot the snake, and then as soon as the shapeshifter was dead, it turned back into a person.
Oh, right. Yeah. The reason I read it that way was because he shoots it, he separates the brain from him, and then the rest of him transforms and then settles back on being human.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I kind of read that as happening like simultaneously.
Oh yeah.
And really interesting because I read it a completely different way. I read it that, he always had his man brain in there.
Ooh.
He was always in control of what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Oh, yeah.
And he went and gone and did it anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very true. I don't know if he necessarily had. I think that he had his mind in there. I don't know if he had a human brain in a snake head because physics or something.
Yeah. I don't know. It's strange that we all got three reads that make sense.
Yeah. I guess that like the most Stephen King read that I could think of was that Roland shoots this snake and then all of a sudden this poor old dude has half a man coming out the back of his neck. Like just
oh yeah,
like that is very upsetting and very Stephen King.
How do they uncouple? Oh no.
Not consciously.
Well, yeah, but so as Ollie dies, he kind of shuffles through various different forms, right? I love the idea that he doesn't just have like a death rattle or death throes. He just just kind of like, okay, well, it's like a reflex almost. The body trying to preserve itself will shake this out. So good.
Yeah. I wish I knew better Latin because I was trying to think of a joke, like a play on rigor mortis, but I don't know any Latin to speak of. So
nothing immediately jumps to mind. If you think of one, tweet at us. Yeah.
Vigor mortis?
Rigor mortis. Rigor mortis.
Rigor mortis is pretty not Latin, I don't think, but very good.
Rigor morphos. I don't know. I think morphos a dream. Morpheus like a dream kind of thing. Yeah. Oh well, I'm positive somebody's ripping their hair out and beating on their steering wheel because we missed an obvious thing. I apologize.
Yeah, if you have studied Latin and are upset by this segment of the podcast, please tweet at Brayton J. Cameron.
Brayton JC.
At Brayton JC. Please tweet all your complaints to at Brayton JC. He will address them personally.
Yeah. But yeah, the mystery has been solved. He got a couple more victims at the end. How cool is that parlor scene though? Do we have any final thoughts about that or the way they kind of deal with the remains?
Nothing specific comes to mind. It all gels together really well, and it's kind of a good penultimate. What is the stone right before the capstone? Because that's what we're looking at right here, and it's very good. The only thing that I am disappointed about is that I have been looking at the lyrics to Anna Ang for about 5 minutes, and I cannot come up with a single good joke.
Oh no!
I mean, make a hole with the gun perpendicular is the first line of that song, and I'm sorry I couldn't get there.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. So the way that they dispose of the body by burning it, they douse it in coal oil. I even love that they've got such a sense of the heebie-jeebies that none of them want the watch. They say, well, there's no reason to let the watch go to waste. It's all bad. Like even something, ostensibly that simple is too much.
Yeah. The watch is fine. Does anybody want it? I mean, it might be cursed. You're right. Fuck it.
In the fire it goes.
That is the only reasonable thing to do with a cursed object like that.
Yeah. Well, what's also funny is by this point the world is already moving on. A watch is useless.
True. Yeah. So they get rid of the body, and I really want to. I feel like I do this every time, but I want to highlight a specific bit of the show notes that you put together, Cole, because I love it very much. So, they get rid of the body, and the next day they get Small Toot back on the rails, and they're getting ready to leave. But before they can, the whole town, Debaria, holds a huge going away celebration for them, which makes sense because they just rescued them from this absolutely horrific thing.
Yeah, it's also a part of custom, right?
And it's a customary traditional thing as well, obviously. Yeah. And like, you know, clearly these guys just kind of want to get home. But as you say in the show notes, Roland and Jamie, they don't mind because they can get laid.
There are no two characters in fiction who would less like a party. Don't check my math on that. You know,
no, I think you're right, and that's why I love that particular call out so much.
Because they even say it.
You've got Roland and Jamie, who are two of like whatever the opposite of a party animal is, like these two like very, very unbelievably stoic characters.
14-year-old grandpas.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
But in this instance, the 14-year-old takes precedence, and they go and get they dick wet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like it is handled much not much more. It's handled slightly more delicately in the book, but like that one sentence that covers an awful lot, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also we have like two people who are, you know, one's over the threshold and one is not, you know, depending on how much importance you place on losing your virginity. Yeah, where's your mush mouth? Depending on how much importance you place on losing your virginity, they obviously place quite a bit. Roland has lost his, but doesn't have enough savviness or worldliness to recognize what Jamie's talking about or what his dad is talking about when they refer to the diddle stick, right?
I think the term they used was long stick.
Long stick. Okay. I'm positive diddle stick pops up somewhere, or maybe that's just me being crass. I don't know. Meanwhile, you know, Jamie understands the concept of female masturbation, but has never had sex himself. So like they're so similar in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, and it's the description of the after party is very brief, but it's weirdly charming in a way.
Yeah.
Well, and that's not a word that I would often associate with Roland.
Or even this time period in Roland's life, right? So before we can get to the point where, you know, Jamie can lose it in the least exciting, like, American Pie prequel ever, they have to stop by Serenity because they have the small matter of the boy to attend to, right? And
yes,
everybody there is incredibly grateful for what they did because, you know, so Serenity of the convent got hit pretty hard. You know, Everling greets them with a big hug, and Sister Fortuna basically kneels and basically begs in gratitude, which doesn't make sense, but that's kind of what happens. They try and, you know, tell her like, no, you don't have to do that, but like, you know, what they've done has made a big difference. They got revenge for this thing that ruined her. You know,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And the convent agrees to take Billy in, at least until puberty. At which point, I actually really enjoyed how they handled this, which was that, like, you know, like we'll take him in, we'll take care of him, we'll teach him until he gets to the age where being surrounded by nothing but women is not going to be a conducive learning environment for a teenage boy.
Well, I think they literally put like, we'll keep him until he gets hair on his lip, and then it will be good for him to go on his way, right?
Yeah, and I just like that seemed like a very realistic sort of exchange.
Yes, yeah, and you know the sense that Roland has is that Billy's going to be all right, you know.
Yeah, which, based on our introduction to Everlyn earlier, I think that anybody living there would be all right.
Yeah.
Because she is huge and terrifying and fantastic.
Yes.
She's the best anyone could hope for.
Yeah.
Yeah. She reminds me of, I can't think of the character's name from Rose Madder.
Oh, Gert? Yeah.
Yeah,
Gertrude,
Gert.
yeah.
She kind of reminds me of like a Gert parallel.
Oh yeah, man, Gert's great.
Yeah. No, and that's one of my favorite things about doing this show is reading all these books in sequence and in parallel, and just kind of being able to draw these parallels between characters, whether or not they were initially intended. Because Stephen King, I think we talked an episode or two ago about just how obviously Stephen King loves stories and what a blatant just love letter to storytelling this entire book is.
Yeah. Well, the entire back half of the series is.
Well, yeah.
This one specifically, I know what you mean. I wasn't correcting you. I was adding additional details.
Yeah,
Sorry.
No, you're not wrong. You're definitely not wrong. But just the way that this book, especially like knowing that it was written so long after the rest, like reading through the Dark Tower, reading through all kind of the tie-in or not tie-in novels, but you know what I mean, the novels that have
the Tower related novels.
Yeah. And just kind of seeing these parallels, and you don't ever know if it's like echoes of the same character or versions of the same character, or if it's just these archetypes that he is using, and it doesn't really matter.
Right.
And I don't think I would have ever even thought to look for those connections if it wasn't for approaching these books the way that this show has had me doing it. So that's been really fun.
Yeah. Same. Yeah, I don't have anything to add, but I will echo what you're saying.
Yeah. So just in a blatant bit of supplication, I guess, like thank you to everybody who donated to the Patreon and made this show happen.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a real cool thing.
It's very strange that we're about halfway through.
Yeah.
I don't more than halfway through. That is a little weird to reckon with, actually. But there's unfinished business here. So we had the action core of this layer of the narrative just here. Now we have the emotional core, and something that really makes me choke up, actually. Because remember back then, back at the beginning, Evelyn told Roland, "Hey, if you survive, I have something for you. It's from your mom." This is where Gabrielle Deshane, Roland's mom, who Roland killed. We saw that at the end of Wizard and Glass and at the beginning of this book. This is where she did her exile, right? For having fallen in with Martin, the court sorcerer. And what Evelyn has is some piece of information and also a letter. So Gabrielle knew that Roland would come here, saying that, hey, Ka is a wheel and it always turns. This is an idea that is going to be extremely important, and I can't recall if the notion of Ka being a wheel is introduced before this in the series, but it is certainly a hallmark of the final trilogy. And the other piece of information is that Martin was here and Evelyn turned him away. Yeah, even in her final days, Evelyn was protecting Gabrielle from him. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so we get to read most of the letter. The very final line is saved for, when we're out of the flashback, but there's some very poignant stuff in here. It starts out very poetically, Gabrielle writing to Roland saying, "The feast I ate was rotten. What I thought was a palace was a dungeon. How it burns, Roland." Referring to what she thought Martin was offering her versus the reality of kind of what was wrought. Right.
Yeah.
Also, Gabrielle knew that if she went back with the information that she had about the plot against Gilead, she could save it for a few years. But Martin assured her, even told her that, she would die. Not only would she die, she would die by her son's hand if she did go. The line being good.
Yeah, and I'll let you read the line because it's very good. But not only that, but that it would destroy him.
Yes. Would you die at your brat's hand and see every goodness, every kindness, every loving thought poured out of him like water from a dripper? Which is what happens, right? And in a lot of ways, that was his plan. That was part of, to destroy him by hook or by crook, right? Not understanding probably that he would make him bitter, that he would put him on a revenge path, but he basically puts his plan right to Gabrielle and, leaves it up to her, and basically puts it on her kind of unfairly. will you do this violence to the one to the one person who cares for you most, in order to save this kingdom that has never really cared for you, right? And she chooses Gilead. She chooses him.
Well, she chooses Ka.
Yes.
Which I feel like that is very telling in terms of Roland's character development also.
Yes. Because she meditated on this, it was a very difficult decision, but every time she thought about it, a voice would say to her, this is what Ka demands. It kind of really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you in particular want. Like, this is the way that it has to go. It's heartbreaking, right? Because what we learn about the final line, like she is fully aware of what she is about to do, of what she is walking into. This is an incredibly, I was about to say, densely tied knot of morality and guilt. That doesn't make any sense. I don't think a knot can be densely tied. But you understand what I mean, right?
It's a monkey's fist.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. And so there's that final line. Good.
Actually, there is one other thing about this, and I'm not sure how this would have come up in the audiobook, but at least in the copy of the book that I have, this entire letter is laid out very intentionally, to the straight up typography and how it is all centered and justified. It doesn't look like a letter; it looks like a poem.
Yes.
Which is definitely it affects how you read it, because going back to that line that you read a little bit ago, you've got he says, would you die he says, would you die at your brat's hand and see, break every goodness, break every kindness, break every loving thought, break poured out of him like water from a dripper. And the entire letter is written like that, and really gives you the intentionality of what King was trying to convey through Gabrielle.
Yes.
Which is very cool.
Each of those clauses, each of those entries in the list presented with the full force of a new idea. Presented on its own. Something that I didn't talk about is kind of the actual physical state of the letter, right? Looking at the handwriting, only Roland and Stephen, Stephen Deshane would have any real reckon of how to read this, because she is obviously at the end of her rope. She's at her wit's end as she's writing this. Her handwriting is completely wrecked all over the place, because she is writing just in the throes of this awful kind of unfathomable despair, right?
Yeah.
It's very sad. That is a simple way to put it, but yeah, it kind of I mean, especially the last line lands like a gut punch, but a good one. It's a loving gut punch. But there is that final line that Roland doesn't share just yet, although he does reveal, to his traveling companions, now in the present day, that in the years that he wandered, I was about to say purposeless, but with a deadly purpose, after the fall of Jericho Hill, he would trace that final line as yet unrevealed over and over again until the letter just basically fell apart. And with that horrible poetic imagery, it's time to go get laid.
Oh yeah.
Bow, bow.
I mean that's pretty relatable. I think that's been my experience for sure.
Roland says that he had to take some time to compose himself, right?
Yeah.
he didn't turn right around, and then just like, all right, time to party.
Yeah.
There was a couple hours and a dinner there.
Himself.
Yeah. Oh man.
I am sorry. I hated that as soon as it was out of my face.
I wish you hadn't. That's fine. I'll allow it. I've said grosser and worse, and will in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have their party, and they go, and we don't know the rest of the story just yet. We're going to find out kind of the next part of this young Roland season, but that is the very end of this particular flashback as we enter the very short coda here. Storms over this, small chapter of basically the current quartet, rolling the story over in their minds, right? You know, much like the telling of, you know, the adventures in Hambry did. This is going to cause time to move very strangely. The story ends right about the same time the Stark Blast does, you know, and they say, like, we're going to wait until the next morning to make sure everything's safe, but, you know, we have survived. We've gotten through the worst of it the most. Very sadly, Jake reflects on, you know, Roland's mother reading him that story, The Wind Through the Keyhole, when his own mom never did the same.
Yeah.
Just reminding you of the sad tale of this privileged white boy's life. The emotional alienation from his parents. That's, you know, that's real. I don't know why I decided to do that. But yeah, this is the part that really gets to me, though. This is the real emotional payoff. The next day, you know, Susanna and Eddie are talking about the story with Roland, and, you know, they try and get the final line out of him. You know, Susanna takes his diminished right hand in hers and says, like, hey, what was that final line? And the final line, I said, I'm going to try and get through this. The final line that Gabrielle wrote to her son, you know, in the high speech, everything else was in the low speech. The final line was, I forgive you everything. Can you forgive me? And, you know, he doesn't answer right away what the answer was, you know, because basically our understanding of this whole event was like, this was the thing that broke him, you know, even more than losing, you know, Susan. By the time Susan was gone, he had already given her up because he had gotten a taste of the tower. You know, he was ready to leave her behind and go on his quest, but it was really the original sin was killing his mom. We have the sense that he has been working very hard, you know, to overcome this, or this has defined him in some way. And Roland, you know, kind of dramatically, kind of sappily, you know, is looking out a window, but, you know, he finally is able to say yes. You know, he smiles and says yes, he can forgive his mom. He never knew if she, you know, if she knew what was going to happen, if she even processed that he was the one who killed her. Knowing that she knew, and even, you know, asked forgiveness and extended forgiveness as one of her last actions, that was enough for him. And, you know, this kind of like re-racks Roland to a certain extent, right? Like, it's not just the catharsis of him revealing his worst sin to his traveling companions. It's this other beat that brings a little bit more shade and texture to it. Sorry, I kind of monopolized that. The afterword here is also very lovely. You know, it's very short. The two most beautiful words in any language are, I forgive you. You know.
I do really like the afterword, and it's, you know, I got there and I was like, oh, like, you know, the two most beautiful words in any language, I forgive, and that's great. But Stephen King specifically said that is what Gabrielle Deschain's the last lines of her letter looked like in the high speech. And all that I could really think of is, okay, so what in the fuck is the high speech then?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was some cool glyphs that Stephen King wanted to have on the page.
Yeah.
There are all these references to it, and like, I understand conceptually what it is, but it just seems like there's, you know, like low speech and high speech. It's whenever it's referenced, it's like, oh, it's just English, but it's different sentences in English.
It's fancy English.
Yeah.
But the two most beautiful words in any language, I forgive, that is a different sentence than I forgive you everything. Can you forgive me?
Yeah.
Like, the meaning is wildly different there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if you're a angry linguistics nerd like me, you know, tweet to at Brayton JC, I guess.
Yeah, I was just along for the emotional ride at this point. Like, I think that even though they're wildly different sentiments, they both ring incredibly true. One to Roland's character, and one just in general as like a resonant theme.
Yeah, and I really did like it, and I don't mean to bring this up as a gripe about the book, but I feel like just that introduced a question that didn't need to be introduced.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just because I'm a goddamn nerdo. I don't know.
It could have just been, you know, here's the way that would have looked in the high speech for you nerds who want to know what the high speech letters look like, and also just an aphorism at the end. Like, don't say that one says the other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that is a very, very minor complaint at the end of a very, very enjoyable book.
Yeah. And a very sweet section. Chase, you know, the kind of this whole last leg here with, you know, the letter and, you know, the modern day kind of better understanding of Roland's character by his quartet. Like, what are your thoughts on that in particular?
Having not read the rest of the books, I am curious at how the death of Roland's mother would have played into his character without this bit of context.
Yeah.
Because I was talking with a friend about the book last night, and he had no idea this book existed, and he has read all of the other ones. Just, you know, slipped by him because it was written a fair bit after the last book. Is that right?
Yes.
Remembering that correctly? Yeah. So it's like, you know, he read them, you know, like a lot of folks as they were coming out, and then just his attention got turned and never knew that this existed.
Mm-hmm.
So this extra bit of context, I mean, it's like you said, it adds a really nice bit of texture to Roland's character. I am curious at how Roland would feel without that context.
Yeah. I'm kind of excited to look forward and see, you know, like, and kind of keep this in mind in reading reading about his character and the way he reacts to stuff, you know, not to give too much away, but things kind of veer away from being Roland's personal story just a little bit. He becomes less of a central figure in this back half, honestly, just as there is far more plot movement that goes on, you know, like on the macro level as opposed to kind of character development stuff. You know, you had the first book and even the second book, which were very much about this kind of drive for revenge that Roland had. You had the Wastelands, which was about, you know, everything about the tower and about kind of growing together as a group. You had Wisdom Glass, which was about kind of the beginning of his obsession. And here is kind of a continuation of that. It's an abrupt kind of break once you get to book 5 to a certain extent. Yeah. So, final thoughts on the book. I feel like I've said everything that I want to say. I still remain just incredibly positive about this very strange book that ends up being kind of light and fun and having a ton of just fun imagery and, you know, fun little narrative concepts to it. I don't have much more to add on top of that. Evan, kind of your final reckoning or final estimation of the book.
Yeah, whatever gripes that I might have brought up over the past couple episodes are very, very minor. I had not read this book before. I meant to when it came out, and then by the time that I got around to it, the podcast was kind of underway, so I held off. Mm-hmm. And I'm very, very glad that I did. It was really cool to be able to read this with fresh eyes and talk about it after not having read it or talked about it or even thought about it that much. Mm-hmm. But it's great. This is just a great little book. And if you are a fan of the series, it's a really wonderful addition. And if you're not and you just want to read something fucking weird, it's really good for that too.
Yeah.
This is just another example of Stephen King being exceedingly good at what he does, and I'm always happy when I'm always happy to see him at the top of his game.
Yeah, this ranks, you know, really high up when you see people do like retrospectives. Like this is very often considered to be like one of his best books of this current decade. You know. Yeah.
No question from me.
Yeah. In a decade where he's done some pretty good stuff, you know.
Yeah.
11, 22, 63, etc. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Under the Dome, like this, he has not been complacent.
No. Chase, same question.
at the beginning of this recording, at least I'm pretty sure it was while we were recording, I said that this book could lose about 20% from the Tim chapters and we would have been good. And I stand by that, but I say that with the caveat of there is something delightful on every page. I enjoyed every moment of this book. It was still, even though we could have lost a little bit, and I feel like it would have been a stronger composition, I still had a fantastic time reading this. And it provided that extra bit of context, not only for Roland, but for Midworld as well, showing us, this is a cool new demon type that we can encounter. And I am about cool new demon types.
Yeah.
And it also gave us a little bit of the, for lack of a better term, lore of Midworld. We got to find out a fairy tale of the gunslingers.
Yes.
Which you don't see a lot of in much media at all, let alone a big kind of darker fantasy series. So getting that little bit of backstory, that glimpse in how they tell their morality tales is pretty neat.
Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to diving even further into the series with y'all. Chase, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at TQLoudly. You can also find me on my podcasts on Another Path. It is an actual play D&D podcast with a focus on good jokes and theatrics. Everybody involved in that is somehow or another involved in theater, at least on a professional, if not, or on a, excuse me, take that again. I lost the ability to speak there. All of us who are involved in that show on a regular basis are, if at the very least, involved in theater on a hobbyist level, if not a professional level. And you can also find me on my other podcast, Shakespeare. It is a roundtable discussion with some of the folks. I sit on a theater board here in Bowling Green, Ohio, and every so often we sit around my kitchen table and talk about the works of Shakespeare.
Oh, cool.
And get progressively a little bit drunker as the show goes on. There are arcs to every other episode, so you can listen to that.
you can track the inebriation.
Yeah, there's a story of beers.
Yeah. Oh man, I would play that game, Beer Story. Yeah. Evan, where can people find you?
I am on Twitter and Instagram at Mr_Harder, all spelled out. That's also my handle on the Duckfeed Slack if you're around there. If you feel like checking out at Very Good Cereal Reviews on Instagram, there's a little bit of activity happening there. We'll see if it turns into anything.
Yeah. Well, also, if you haven't seen it, it's still there for you.
Oh yeah, there's still there's still some real weird shit going on. It is past.
And it is a pro checkout, by the way. That is a good Instagram, my friend.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's one of those things where I've definitely got a whole bunch of real weird ideas, and it's just kind of a question of finding, the mental bandwidth to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
But yeah. The most recent couple of posts, some real life stuff that I came across in the world that gave me some real weird ideas, and I'm kind of excited.
Yes, inspiration. Yeah.
Yeah. Cereal is everywhere. Come learn with me.
You say cereal is everywhere, but I think that's especially true if you have a kid. Yeah, Cheerios pop up in places where Cheerios ought not be.
He's pretty easy to please.
Oh yeah. And you can find me on the other shows here on the Duckfeed.tv network. Additionally, you can watch my streams at twitch.tv/DuckFeed.tv. I stream horror games on the weekends. And those are archived on YouTube, youtube.com/DuckFeed.tv. If you want to support the network, you can go to patreon.com/DuckFeed.tv. All of that's explained there. I don't have to blow a lot of hot air about what that is. just go check it out, see if you can fit it into your life. If you can't, that's cool. We're happy to have you here. Maybe leave us a review on iTunes instead. Yeah. So
I also just real quick want to give a very, very brief shout out to the Duckfeed Teespring store. I got a Hex Crank V-neck a couple months ago.
Oh, the T Public rather.
Oh, is it T Public? I'm sorry.
Duckfeed.tv/shirts.
Let me take that again.
No, it's fine. I corrected you.
I don't fuck Teespring.
We used them in the past. It's fine. No, I corrected.
That's what I was thinking of.
But you got a Hex Crank V-neck.
Yeah, I got a black Hex Crank V-neck with the white Hex Crank logo on it, and it is extraordinarily comfortable, and I like it very much. You should check it out.
They sell very comfortable stuff. I wouldn't have used them if I didn't like their stuff. So.
Yeah, no, it's real good, and it fits in a way that it'll hit all your curves in just the right ways if you're if you're like me and have abundant curves.
Very nice. So next time we're going to be talking about we're going to pick up where we left off with the Dark Tower comics, starting with the one-off one issue arc, the Sorcerer, and then the Fall of Gilead, and then the Battle of Jericho Hill. There's one that we're not including in that. I'm just going to kind of summarize what happens because it's not very eventful. But yeah, I want to at least hit the Fall of Gilead because that is such or the Battle of Jericho Hill because that is such that is such an important part of the lore. And then after that, it's the Little Sisters of Illyria, then Salem's Lot, then the Regulators, and then on to what is that? The Wolves of the Calla. There we go. Yeah.
Little Sisters of Illyria. I am very much looking forward to seeing how many BioShock references come up.
That was very hard to keep out of my mind when I was reading that. Yeah. So I think that is everything. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this. We hope to see you next time. And also thank you, Chase. Thank you, Evan, for hopping on here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Cole.
Yeah. Until next time, long days and pleasant nights.